this modulating into the meditative placement of attention, is restorative. Yes, restorative. In other words, the ideas of yourself and the ideas of the world have always been the obstruction. That's always been the problem. So, as adults, we can awaken to a faith, if you will, a trusting in no thing, in not having a plan, into recognizing that we are not the doers of action. What are you saying, Cesar? What do you mean we are not the doers? If we are not the doers of action, who is? Well, nobody is. The universe is happening, and life does not turn on itself. Right now you're hearing me. Even if you have a PhD, you really do not know how you are hearing and how you are translating sound into meaning. We are always in collaboration with an infinite intelligence that is pervasive, and that is indeed what we are. And recognizing that allows us to still ourselves for a moment. Why? Because we want to access that resource. That resource is indeed it is the principle of God itself. I won't say it is the image of God. It's the principle of God, and that is captured in stillness. We access that resource by being that resource. How do we get there? By the cessation of what it is not. The idea of you. That is what it is not. So we interrupt the monkey mind, the racing mind, the opinionated mind, the mind that thinks it knows what's happening. We do not understand exactly what's happening, and that's not such a bad thing. We don't get rid of our imaginations, folks, when we awaken to the reality that is suggested by non-duality, that is suggested by the meditative placement of attention, that is suggested by the collaboration with a higher power. We do not eliminate the imagined self. It remains, but it's put in its place. It is now understood as a superimposition on the actual. It is not what is actual. You and I are not what is actual. What is actual always is and always shall be. That is actual. That is real. If you're not exposed to this type of thinking, you'll need to hang in there for a period of time and get the drift, get the idea of what we're talking about. We are indeed talking about the renewal of our minds, and we're also speaking about the possession of the mind by mode states. Mode states, those are the developed ideas and values, a self-conception that might have occurred under the influence of abuse, for example. That trauma continues to follow us throughout our life, and we're not going to get rid of it. However, we need to put it in its place so that it does not take over. If you have been initially traumatized at 7 years old, you'll have a potential to be possessed, if you will, by a 7-year-old. Yeah, by a 7-year-old and the 7-year-old's value system. 7-year-olds don't have professions. They don't have relationships in the same ways an adult does. They don't have marriages, for example. So let's just think about what it means to stop everything. I'm going to suggest to you that that it needs to be done on a regular basis. And it is indeed the meditative placement of attention. However, it is also just looking a certain way. It's a certain perspective. And this perspective occurs intermittently for us all the time, but we are not aware of it. We are not valuing it. Let's remember that the mind eliminates information. That's a very critical function of the mind, because we are likely getting an infinite amount of information into our being all the time, so to speak. Our being is, since it's not divisible from the environment, you know that everything is interdependent. Even secular science recognizes that. It is suggesting that we're getting an infinite amount of information coming through us, so to speak, being conducted through us. And the mind selects information that it needs and eliminates the rest. So we're getting a grain of sand, so to speak, on a beach of information that we utilize. And what information? It's the utilitarian information that is associated with our drives and our needs, and we eliminate the rest. Mindfulness is really looking beyond our desires and noticing our circumstance free from the terms of it being so-called utilitarian or useful. We awaken to existence. We come out of that mode state where if something has no use, we eliminate it. We dare to look at things that are so-called useless. And it's a very critically important enrichment. Why? We see the kingdom of God. we see the situation. This thing has never been us. It has always been what is happening. And what is happening is this infinite life unfolding as manifold existence. However, the quality of that pervasive, singular, all-existing life has always been there. It is what's going on, and it's who is listening, what is listening to this tape. In the morning, what I do when I take the subway to work is that I tend to stimulate myself by reading material, for example, like Nisargadatta, Thou Art That, or rather his book is I Am That. And other non-dualist writers. And I also pause and look at the world and being the world. I suspend judgment. And I do this sometimes for a couple of minutes, and I relax. And also I stop the process of worrying, trying to figure out how I'm going to fulfill myself and what is going to be occurring. I do not know the course of life. Life is flowing through the agency of an infinite intelligence, and I am shifting to trust that. That means I'm shifting to not knowing, with a sense of confidence that I'm not being irresponsible, but actually turning my life over to what it is. I get Cesar out of the way. Cesar is out of the way. And this is helpful. Very helpful. Those moments are restructuring my mind, so to speak, through years of worry, through years of self-soothing, through years of self-conceptualizing, years of constructing a world view, and the value system that comes with that. We must shift from the value system that has been informing our lives through all the years of our ignorance, through the years of our ignorance. That ignorance is the idea that you are the doer of actions, and if you don't do something, it will not get done. Again, we keep that notion, but we put it into a larger vessel of wisdom that recognizes that we are indeed the life that is being lived by all existence. So this is just a brief talk, a little encouragement on the process of recovering from psychological wounds. We will be focusing on the abuse schema in the next session. Thanks for tuning in.